What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. Bye, singing dog. Bye, goal.
I pronounce you.
Bye, wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio.
I literally just got up and thought to myself, it's Thursday today. No way, kids. It's actually Friday, and it's a holiday weekend. And I'm so excited and so nervous and so petrified, and there's so much to talk about with this lovely gentleman by the name of Gerald Weaver. We are going to talk about his books. We're going to talk about his past experience. We're going to talk about a little bit of everything. So without further ado, since I know he's holding on the line, let's get him on and get him going. Hi, Gerald.
Hello, Sin. How are you doing?
Hello. Oh,
Hello?
I'm nervous. My God. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. I hope you can hear me.
Okay, good. Good. I hear a little crackling, but I'm sure it'll go away, I hope. My goodness. You're impressive. Do you know that?
Oh, you're being... Flattery will get you everywhere, Sin.
I know, because I've been, creeping on you for the last 48 hours. I've looked at your Facebook. I've looked at your Twitter. I've done, every investigation I can. That's my job. I'm a journalist, so I'm supposed to know a lot about you. And I do.
Well, when I was young, I wanted to be a writer, but I decided I should do some living first, but I ended up doing a little more living than I intended. So.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that. And this interview is going to be very different than any other interview. I can assure you of that, because they tell me I'm very different.
Great.
So we're going to start our interview off with something that you're completely not going to expect, because we're totally going to talk about this, because I'm all about promotion. And so we're totally going to do this shameless promotion. Let's talk about Harriet. I want to talk about your child. We're not going to talk about you first. Can we talk about your kid?
My favorite subject. I mean, I would rather talk about Harriet than about anything.
You?
Because
well, we're still going to talk about you, but we want to talk about Harriet, and there's a reason we want to talk about her. Now, let me just tell you, folks, to those of you that do not know, his daughter happens to be an actress, an actual working actress, and I've seen some of her work because I, of course, creeped on your page. And the first thing I want to tell you guys is he is adamant about singing her praises, and he's so sweet about it, because he's like, I have a son and I have a daughter, and it's not like I'm trying to not talk about my son, but he's just not on Facebook. So he's like, let's talk about Harriet. And then he'll point his son out. It's the cutest little thing. I'm like, it's so adorable. So let's talk about Harriet. And I want to talk about Harriet because I'm very heavy in indie film. So I could probably do something for that child of yours. Not that she needs mine.
Oh, wow, yeah.
What? So tell us about Harriet.
When she was 5 or 6, my mother took her to the hairdresser and came home with a modeling contract. Apparently the hairdresser thought she was so beautiful, walked her across the street to her friend who was a modeling agent, and they came home with a contract. I signed it. And she ended up being like the Oil of the Lay Mother's Day girl and Pennsylvania Fatherhood Initiative, McCormick Spices. She did all these commercials, and she started doing acting classes, and that's when she got the bug. But her dad made her study hard, and she actually got into Yale, where I had gone to school, and I went to school with Polly Draper, who was on 30-something, and Marklyn Baker was on Perfect Strangers, and so I knew something about that, and she ended up being quite successful. Her senior year, she was in a professional production at the Yale Repertory Theater with Paul Giamatti of Hamlet.
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yep.
So then she went to New York, and she was getting a lot of work in independent film. She did off-Broadway and off-Broadway, and she decided that in Los Angeles you have to be young to do well, and in New York you can be young or middle-aged, or it doesn't matter. So she picked up after 2 years in New York and moved to Los Angeles, and she's taking classes at Beverly Hills Playhouse, and she's had interviews at Nickelodeon, and she's working very hard to try and get cast in a television show or a movie.
Oh my gosh, this is so neat. So good. We'll have to stay connected after we do this interview, because that's a lot of what I've become now. As I started as an author, and I'm now very heavy into film. So I judge films that your daughter's probably in, and I write films. And a lot of my friends are New York City producers and directors, and they make these films all the time. So it would be awesome to see this. She's lovely. Your daughter is lovely, and I'm not just saying that. She really is lovely. So I think that would be terrific. So that's so exciting. Okay, so good. So we've covered the Harriet angle. Talk to me about your top 10 list, because I adore that. You're like a David Letterman wannabe, so to speak, but you're not really David Letterman. If you go onto your Facebook page, I love how you do these top 10 things, and it's all these neat, well, I'll let you explain it. It's a cool concept. He does a top 10 list all the time.
Well,
yes.
My first novel was, each chapter was a reference to a great work of literature. And so I wanted to highlight each one of those works of literature, and so I decided to go with the top 10 list to sort of make a point about each one of those individual authors. And one of my favorite ones is Walt Whitman. It's like you're written a great American piece of literature if a famous literary critic has thrown your book into the fire, or if a famous clergyman says that you should be thrown into the fire, or if no libraries have picked up your book, and all these horrible things that happened to Whitman, which I think are should be listed and should be known.
Sure.
And of course, in the end, he got a letter from Ralph Waldo Emerson saying this is like the greatest book I ever read. So I've done that to promote those chapters in that book, but I've got a different.
It's neat.
Book, so,
I think it's a very neat and interesting idea, to tell you the truth. It's quite entertaining. But then, of course, I have a very creative, different mind, so I appreciate things like that. Now, since you brought it up, of course, obviously you attended Yale University, and, of course, to those of you that are listening and that do not know, obviously that's where you achieved your Bachelor of Arts degree. I also thought it was kind of nice that both yourself and, as I understand it, your wife are part of the Yale University Art Gallery. So talk to me a little bit about that. How did you get involved in that?
That's an interesting question, too. You certainly are ranging far afield, but that's cool. I married my second wife 11 years ago, and she had these really small sort of Tang Dynasty terracottas, and I said, wow, that's really cool. Do you have a dealer? And she said, yeah. He goes into China, and he's done it for years, and he's pretty well connected. He brings these things out. And she said, but I would buy these small things because I was thinking if you had, if I could buy art, it would be really expensive and not as nice, but I'd buy something that cost less money and would be just as beautiful and old and significant. And I said, well, if you have a dealer, we're going to sell all our stock and sell our house and start buying Chinese antiquities, because when I worked on the Hill, I knew that the Chinese government was working on a treaty to ban all export of all Chinese antiquities. It happened 5 years after we got married, and it stopped all export of Chinese antiquities, and of course that means the end of supply, or certainly a shortening of supply. And I said, in the meantime, China's making new millionaires every week, so there's going to be an increase in demand, and they're going to want to buy this stuff back. So we went into it big time and bought very old, very nice pieces, and we sold one for roughly 10 times what we paid for it. But
nice.
I know, so this is tremendous investment, unlike stocks or real estate or anything, but the very, very best part of it is they decorate our house like itself is a gallery. And so I guess the other idea I had at the time, too, was to put these things on loan at the Yale University Art Gallery, which, of course, increases their cachet, makes them more valuable, and sort of proves their authenticity. Right. And so we developed a relationship with them, and then we started donating art, and now we're like patrons because we make a significant contribution. And actually, they're considering my wife for a position on the board. So, and we have a great many friends. Yeah, so it's great, and I enjoy going to. Actually, in a week or two, we're going to New York for what they call Asia Week, where all the galleries have their auction shows. Yeah, and they get to come up. They come up to me and treat me like their pet author in the art world. So that's really fun.
That's really cool, actually, because when I first started researching you and I saw this note, and I'm like, what's up with this guy selling and buying these Chinese antiques? And I'm thinking, really? I was like, what? It just kind of struck a chord in me. I'm like, seriously? Because I looked at your picture first, and then I read about you, and I'm like, really? It just didn't seem to, correlate. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't put you with that. Now it seems to make more sense.
there are a lot of things that don't correlate with my record.
Yeah, I'm kind of getting that, actually. Now that I know you a little bit better through all this research, yeah, I can definitely see that. Now, I have a question for you. You're a teacher, or at least you were a teacher, as I understand it. You used to teach English and Latin, is that correct? So you're a linguist of sorts?
Yeah, what happened was there was a shortage of Latin teachers at a time when Latin was booming, and I think part of that was because of the movie Gladiator, but also because people wanted to get their kids to improve their vocabulary for the SATs,
okay.
And there were no certified Latin teachers, but I had 7 years of it. I could, at one point, translate the Aeneid, so they brought me in as a stopgap for 3 years, and I also taught English.
Nice. Very nice.
And that was fun. It was the most fun I ever had with I also coached basketball and baseball. It was the most fun I ever had.
Oh, my gosh. Look at look at you. Oh, my gosh. Now, you're not still currently teaching at present? Am I to understand?
No. Because of the success of the sale of the Chinese art thing, and because my wife works at the World Bank, I'm able to write 24/7.
Got it. Okay, I understand. Well, the reason I ask is this, and you're going to find this funny because I always think it's humorous. One of the things that I absolutely love about today's guest, folks, so I have seen is I'm under the understanding that you can speak Sicilian. And so one of my life goals is not only to get to Italy, but in my head I'm going to end up marrying a beautiful Italian male, and I want to know how to speak Latin, I'm all right, Italian. So here's what I'm trying to figure out. They must make like this book, right, like Italian for Dummies, because I ain't the brightest light in the Christmas tree when it comes to language. So I'm like, who better to ask than Gerald? You'll be able to tell me this. How do I learn it in 3 easy steps? That's all I want to know. Pimsleur or one of the other audio tape companies, I forget the name of it. There's another one, but they're both pretty good. And unfortunately, I've lost almost all my Italian. When I was born, my mother was working, and my grandmother was my nanny, and she spoke Sicilian to me. And for 5 years, I could speak English and the Sicilian dialect. And even when I graduated from college and went to Italy the first time, I could understand everybody, pretty much talk to them. But over the years, I've lost a lot of that. I mean, I can say certain things, but I did lose it. It's unfortunate too, because I think that everybody should have a second language. I agree with you 150%. And Italian is so beautiful. Maybe it's just me, and I know I'm biased, but I think it's just an absolutely beautiful language. And it speaks and says so much with saying so little, so to speak. So I definitely want to. Well, it's a very emotional language. I mean, I always say that it's really good for arguing. Not that I've heard a lot of arguing in it, which I have, but it's sort of so expressive that way. I bet. I can only imagine. My gosh. Okay, so tell me something. Obviously, I know you attended the Columbia. You can tell it's a Friday and a weekend here. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's Friday morning. Columbus School of Law, of course, you attended to get your Juris Doctor. And I know that your father was an attorney. So I guess I was curious to ask you, is that something that was prompted, so to speak, because, of course, your father was a lawyer, so you felt compelled somewhat to be able to go on and carry that on? Or what was your primary motivation there? Well, that's a sort of part of it. I mean, I got out of college in 1977, and like a lot of people in those days, I really had no idea what I wanted to do. And my father had been a lawyer. I figured I could do that easily, but I looked at it as a continuation of my liberal arts education. And that's really what it was. I mean, you read these cases in contracts or cases in commercial law or cases in real estate or cases in criminal law, and you're actually learning about the world because you learn about these disputes and all these different categories. And I found that to be really interesting. But midway through law school, a friend of mine called me and said, I'm on Capitol Hill. You have to come down here. This is perfect for you. And then I did. I went there and was an intern, and they immediately hired me, and I immediately loved it. And it went from there. I was an intern, then I was a legislative assistant, and then I ran a campaign, and I came back as the chief of staff. So yeah, but it was important and helpful to have had a law degree by that point. Oh, I imagine so. I mean, just knowing your story, et cetera, which we'll get into, of course. That's why I kind of figured, and I would assume something like that. Now, I was assuming, just on looking at the pictures, now, is your son going to be pursuing something relative to law, or has he gone a different direction? Because I know about the actress. But let's talk a little bit about your son. He's gone a different direction. He's become an executive at a tech
if you're a company that's got 10 offices around the country, they come and they say, we'll cut your phone bill by 90%, and just have all the intercompany calls go over the internet, and they set that up and teach people how to do it, and they do quite well. They were actually, they're really fast growing. He likes that sort of thing because he's always been a tech kid. I remember, I think when he was about 16 and my daughter was 14, I gave them both custodial stock accounts with a little bit of money, and I told them, you make your own picks. I want you to learn about this thing. And my son immediately invested in Apple. He invested in Apple when it was at $40. And I remember going back to him and saying, why the heck didn't you tell me? Because now it's, 600 or something like that.
Oh, my gosh. Look at that. So they're a little bit different, obviously. So you have one on the creative side. You have the other one in terms of the business side. Now, in retrospect, I was curious to ask you this question. If you could do it all over again, would you have just gone and done the artistic side of things and done writing, et cetera, and never gotten into, let's say, being a lobbyist and all the other things you've done? Or would you still have stead the course and gone in that direction, the one that you pursued?
Well, that's another incredibly interesting question. I often think about that because I look at authors who are, 30s and 40s. And, I could have and should have started earlier. But, again, I have had such a rich and varied life experience, and it really is educational and useful for my writing. I would say, in answer to your question, I would probably pick some sort of hybrid. I mean, I wish I had started to write earlier, I'd say like 40 or 45, but that way I would have had plenty of experience. But I don't know. I may have just chosen to go the way I have because one of the most important lessons I ever learned was being a father and sort of a mother to my children too. Because in a divorce from my first wife in 2003, I was awarded custody. So I think I learned a great deal from that. By to me, the most important thing I could do would be wrangle some concession from a teacher or put together some weird art project, and you learn lessons that very few men ever learn, and that is that doing things for your kids like that is just the most fulfilling thing possible.
Yeah, that's one of the first things I thought of when I looked at you. I was like, I have to ask this man that question because I can only imagine, based on your life story, like, boy, I wonder if he wanted to go back like 20 years and say to himself, let's do this or this. Not that makes you any more or any less incredible than you are right now, because I really am in awe. Did I say that twice now? Probably, because I'm so nervous. But I'm getting better. You're getting easier to talk to, so that's good. So my next question is this. You have a very good sense of humor. I'm not sure if people tell you that, but you do. You have a very entertaining way of looking at almost everything, and that means not just politics side of things, but the other side of things. I see that you have an affinity for some of the few things that I do, and this is just on a personal note. And I usually tend to do this because a lot of times people want to know that their guests are actually, or my guests are human. I realize that you're an author and you're a very big deal and all this stuff, but you're still a person too, and you're still a guy. And so these are some of the things that I've learned about you, which I think is awesome. Like, for instance, you're a huge fan of Helen Mirren, and I want to know why, because I'm a huge fan of Helen Mirren. And we have that in common. So I was like,
it's funny. I was asked once in London. My publisher's in London. I do a lot of promotion over there, and somebody once said, "Why did you decide to become a writer?" And I said, because if you become a writer, you might be famous enough that you actually would get to meet Helen Mirren. So it's like, I am quite fascinated with her. I think she's one of the smartest,
I see that,
most attractive, broad-minded, bold, sexy woman on the planet. She's a good 10 years older than I am. But I saw her years and years ago in Excalibur and in Caligula, of all things, in the late 70s. And I always thought that immediately then, and I thought it was kind of cute that only about 20 years ago the rest of America woke up and sort of realized, what this woman is. This sort of, they've always thought she was sexy in Britain, but America sort of came late to the Helen Mirren game. But so one of the reasons I'm fascinated with her is I'm happy that I saw her early. So.
She's totally amazing, and I agree with you. I love the fact that she has tattoos as well, because I'm just about to get my first one, and I'm like, I think it's very attractive and appealing. So I have to ask the author, because I haven't seen, I would have pegged you for a tattoo guy.
Yeah,
I'm
afraid there's a long story on that too.
Aha! I was right.
It's actually hinted at, or kind of fictionalized in my first novel. But this is going to run ahead on one of your questions. But I got a tattoo from a guy named Spike, and I had to trade some legal work in order to do it. And we had to post guards around where it was being done, because if we had been caught, we'd have been thrown in solitary confinement. So, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So I have this really cool jailhouse tattoo, which is really because it was made with a cut guitar string, cocktail straw, and smuggled Indian ink, and engine from a Walkman. It kind of was sort of faded and wasn't really perfect at all. But as a friend of mine said to me when he looked at it, he said, "Oh, I know why you did that. Because everywhere you've ever gone, whether it's Hong Kong, Capitol Hill, you've gotten a souvenir." I say, and that's your souvenir from prison. So he's kind of right.
Of course. Look at that. See, and I always I tend to try to believe I'm a good reader of people, even though I have not met you. And it just seemed logical to me, because I'm like, yeah, some of these pieces added up. I also noticed that you are a mutual fan of The Sopranos and Nurse Jackie, and it's funny you mentioned meeting people, because now I've been an author long enough, and I've been in radio long enough. Most of my friends are from the show The Sopranos, which I consider myself very lucky to know.
That show started after I got out, and I watched that first episode, and I was 5 seconds into it, and I was hooked. And I sat there and watched the rest of every episode, and now I own the CDs or DVDs of that show. And I said, I would turn to my wife and my friends and anybody who would listen to me and say, I know those guys. And I'm not talking about the fictional people or the actors, but I know those mob guys. I mean, I know them. I mean, I got more mob guy stories than I hoped to ever tell in my entire life. And as a matter of fact, when I first landed in prison, it was a underboss of the Bonanno family who protected me and saved me. So I was like,
wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. Now, if there isn't a book in the making, Mr. Weaver, there you go.
I know. So here's a Yale guy who collects art, was a teacher, and then also had that experience in prison. And one of the things I will point out, though, is the Montgomery County public school system let me teach, and the local court awarded me custody, even though I had that record, because they both looked at the case and saw that I had pretty much been railroaded, and it was a politically motivated case. And so that experience also taught me a lot about my priorities, and it also gave me more stories and a stranger sense of humor than I would have had I not been to prison.
Oh, I understand completely. I get it. Now, the last two persons
Falco, and you know those guys? Wow.
I have not met Edie Falco yet. Obviously, we all know that Tony Soprano passed away, and one of my goals had been to interview him. I would have loved to have done an interview with him, because I think he's amazing. But a lot of the people that come from that show, lesser down on the totem pole, let's say, so to speak, or people that I associate with that I'm interviewing. I go to New York a lot, so obviously it goes without saying that they're all there. It's an interesting dynamic, because I too have now I know the mobster side of things, and I have a whole motorcycle show. So now, of course, the guy that I'm interviewing in 2 weeks is George Christie, the guy that used to be the guy from the History Channel, from the Hells Angels. It's weird how you branch into new worlds and it opens your eyes to some things. I'm sure you and I have probably some commonalities in that area. But it's an interesting one. And it was a wonderful show, and I think it's terrific. I just watched it for reference for somebody else. And Nurse Jackie, of course, doesn't love Edie Falco, and I think that was amazing, and I'm so bummed that show is over. I don't have any really good shows to review right now. It's kind of bummed.
Yeah, I love that Nurse Jackie show for the same reason that I wrote the Melinda Sherman character in my current novel, The First Gentleman, the way I did, because I think for years and years and years in movies and in books and in other popular culture, women were portrayed as either like really perfect or really bad, and you never had interesting, flawed characters who are women, and I think she's that, and I tried to write my character that way as well.
Gotcha. Awesome.
I mean,
so next question.
What?
Yeah, no kidding. I saw, and maybe I missaw this picture, but I'm pretty sure I didn't, but is indeed true that you know how to tango?
Yeah, I do.
I'm way impressed.
I've always loved to
I'm
dance.
way impressed.
And for years, my current wife was the head of private investment for Latin America in the World Bank. And she'd say, I have a trip that I'm going to Haiti and Port-au-Prince. Do you want to come with me? And I said, well, I don't think so. But she'd say, or I'm going to into the heart of the Bolivian jungle or whatever. And I'd say, she'd say, you want to come? And I'd say, I don't think so. And she'd say, I have to go to Buenos Aires for a week. And I said, I'm so there. My bags are packed. Same with Rio de Janeiro. I ran there, too. But in Buenos Aires, she's working, and I signed up for tango lessons every day from a guy named Alejandro G. And he said to me, he said, Gerald, he said, a third of the people in Buenos Aires love the tango, a third are indifferent, and a third think it's old-fashioned and stupid. But what they don't know is every single one of them is the tango. Thought,
oh, my gosh.
And then he took me to a milonga. He said, don't go to these tango shows or anything. And you go to these veterans clubs or these nasty little places, and they have this dance that starts at 11 p.m. at night. And it's one of the most subtle, interesting things in the world. For instance, they don't ask each other to dance. The men and women sit in lines across from each other, and they choose partners by glances. If that's not
really
subtle. Yeah. Men look at the women, and if a woman nods back, then they sort of will meander to the dance floor. And when that music starts, they don't start dancing. They sort of talk a little bit.
Okay.
And one by one, the couple starts dancing. It's just one of the most magical things in the world.
Oh, I imagine so. I haven't had the pleasure to do it yet. I'm hoping, with any luck at all, I'll be able to get a chance to before I'm dead, but you have to have time for all that stuff, and I'd have to stop writing long enough. But it sounds just way exciting. That's awesome. So you really are that interesting and versatile. Did you know that about yourself? I'm sure you did.
No, I have my friend Polly Draper, who's on 30-something, an actress in New York, is actually hosting my book launch party in New York on the 15th.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, she tells me, you're like that guy on that beer commercial, the most interesting man in the world. And I say, well, how kind of you. Some think I've done a little bit too interesting.
Well, yeah, you're a little different, not of the norm. So let's talk about that, actually. Before I read into this, one of the things that I thought was really neat was a quote that you had made. It's short, it's sweet, and simple. It's just saying the mere fact that women change history. So I thought I'd give you a little chance to talk about that from your perspective, because obviously I'm female, and I'm not always a complete advocate for females, but in general I am. Talk to me a little bit from the male perspective of how you see things in terms of women being able to change history, even more so today versus a year ago, because I'm hoping the stride has been significant.
This is one of my soapboxes, and I'm going to go back a little bit. There's a character in ancient Roman history called Livia, and in I, Claudius, which was on PBS many years ago, she's portrayed as this, maniacal killer person, and all the history books say the same thing. They say that she poisoned different people to sort of manage who should become emperor. But the fact is, she was incredibly smart. She was from a well-to-do family. She was really well educated, and if anybody should have been running the empire, it should have been her. And a lot of times, I think women have been overwritten and forgotten by history, and even where they have affected it, they just hadn't had a chance to change history. But when they have changed history, it's just not been reported. So I honestly believe there will be a tipping point, and it will happen where not just that women are treated equally as men and the glass ceiling goes away. I think that one day women will be in charge. I actually think that's part of the evolution of the species. 57% of all college graduates are women. Even higher percentage of high school graduates are women. 15 years ago, 1% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women, and now it's 5%. And even though 5% is small, that's still a quintupling in the
Correct.
last 15 years. Only 20% of the United States Congress is comprised of women members, of senators and congressmen. But those 20% represent almost 80% of all the women who've ever been elected to Congress. So these are small incremental things, and I think it's going to be like a Malcolm Gladwell tipping point. One day we're just going to turn around and women are going to be in charge. And I think one of the things that's happening in general now, and I knew this when I was hiring people to run campaigns, I could hire a guy and he'll say, yeah, I'll do this, I'll do that, and then he'd go off and have a beer. And I would hire a woman, she'd say, I'll do this and I'll do that. And I wouldn't hear from her again until she had done those things. And she'd come back and say, I did those things, and here they are. So they're more conscientious. So I think there's economic reasons and social reasons that one day it's just going to flip. And it's going to be like the polls on same-sex marriage, which lagged and lagged and lagged, and it was a minority opinion, and one day we woke up and it was a majority opinion. It's like you push a stone up the hill and it's hard and hard, and all of a sudden you get to the top of the hill and it takes off. And I think that's going to happen with gender roles, at least in America. And I think that Hillary Clinton is going to be a significant. She's not going to be the tipping point, but if she gets elected, she's going to be a significant milestone in that journey. It's going to wake a lot of people up, and I think the time has come. I mean, men have been screwing up things for years. I mean, seriously, I think the criminal justice system is a sin. These, military foreign adventures are just horrible, and maybe if women are in charge, things will change a little bit. I mean, I don't know if they could be. And I doubt that women will be just as stupid as men. They're probably considerably smarter.
I love it. This is like making me feel so much better this morning.
No, this is a fact. I'm going to tell you this. I know this from personal experience. Testosterone makes you stupid. It's just a fact.
I'm so quoting that. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And it's an interesting, the way that you look at things is so interesting, because in most of my circles, I'm not going to lie to you, the first thing I hear is we live still in 2016 a very male-dominated society. It's one of the number one reasons why people are very concerned about the fact that a woman could not get voted into office, simply because we're still in the archaic age as it relates to how men view women. Do you think it's still a safe assertion to say that some of that still exists out there? Do you think that that's a threat or a potential issue?
Oh, no. I think that, the patriarchy is not going to very easily give itself up. I mean, it's there.
Sure.
It's there, and it's not, I keep talking about this tipping point, and I don't know if it's even going to happen in my lifetime, but I sincerely believe it's going to happen, but it's going to be a very difficult road before that point. If you look at, I look at a woman and I see my daughter, I see my three sisters, I see my mother, and I'm surprised at how many men don't do that. And, the entire oppression and relegation to second-class citizenship that happens to women all around the world, and particularly in Islamic countries, it's hard to imagine that these men have brothers and have sisters and wives and daughters and mothers. It's just, I can't imagine that. And I think the key there is daughters. Is that, I looked at my daughter and I thought, there's no way I want her to be restrained. I want her to have as much freedom and opportunity that my son has. And I think that may be the thing that changes it. But men are going to not give it up easily. And I think another issue is that some of the worst misogynists in the world are women. And I see a lot of that kind of weird competitiveness. I don't know if it's that or maybe self-hate or whatever in some of the things that women say about Hillary. It's like, no, you may not like her, and there'll be reasons not to like her, but the sort of virulence and the power of the hatred that comes out, I think, speaks to something that's a lot darker.
Gotcha. I see what you mean. Now, since you brought up the topic, obviously, of women and strong women and influential women, I'd like to talk a moment, of course, just so everyone knows, prior to the book that you've done now, in 2015, of course, you did Gospel Prism. So I have two different questions about that. I like the backstory involved with that, so I think it's very important that we talk about Marie Colvin. And just as a side note, I think it's hugely admirable. 20% going to her memorial fund on the basis of the sales of this book of Gospel Prison. So I'd like you to talk about how you develop those 12 life lessons that get talked about in the book and your association with Marie, because I think it's important that the listeners know how much of an impact she had on you and how much of a success this book is in part because of her participation in your life.
Wow. I mean, do you have a few hours? It's like...
I wish
Marie
I did, darling, because she sounds
like
amazing.
I know. She was like a once-in-a-lifetime woman, and everything that you read about her, being bold and irreverent and smart and deeply compassionate, all those things are sort of pale reflections of the way she actually was. She was one of the boldest, most irreverent, smartest, most compassionate, colorful people I've ever known. I mean, if I write a character in any novel that's as nearly as dramatic as she was, I'd be very, very fortunate. And I met her when we were in college. It's funny because she was sort of a tomboy and she was a little bit overweight, and she hung around with this really beautiful girl that all the boys were after, and I sort of walked right by that girl and straight to Marie because she was so lively. And she always loved me for that, for seeing past her friend and her, and we dated in college and after college, and it was, we never ever got too serious, but we remained close friends. And she had this rock star career. She became the Paris bureau chief of the UPI, and then she became the foreign correspondent for the London Sunday Times, and we would stay in touch and talk to each other, like when we were at divorces or when I got out of prison. She called me up and said, "Don't worry about it, you're still cool." But when my daughter got into Yale and she went to a summer semester in France, we stopped in London because I said, "I want you to meet my friend Marie." And Marie immediately adopted Harriet and said, "I'll do whatever you want. If you want to come work in the London West End stage after school, you can live in my house. And if you're going to Paris, here are like 8 cool people I'm introducing you to." And then she turned to me, and she said, this is the first time I'd seen her in person in years, and she grabbed me by the shoulders and she said, "I am tired of getting emails from you and letters from you that are more well written than novels I see, that I read. I want you to write the damn book." So it sort of shook me up. It was one of those Wizard of Oz moments where the wizard comes out from behind the curtain and tells the scarecrow, you always had a brain, you just needed a diploma. And she said, "You've always been a writer, you just need me to tell you that." So then we started talking about my experience in prison, and also the fact that we both are really voracious readers and wrote a lot of challenging literature. And we started talking about one of the events, and she said, "That's just like The Merchant of Venice," and then the next one, "That's just like Don Quixote." So then I was off and running, and I would get up every morning at 4 or 5 in the morning and write her a short email, and then I would write that novel, with each chapter being a reference to one of the great works that we both shared and we both had read and talked about. And so I wrote this final version of it, and I mailed it to her on January 25th, 2012. And then I started writing my second book, and I still kept emailing her, and for some reason, I don't know why, on the 22nd of February, instead of getting up and writing to her, I got up and Googled her and found out an 11-minute-old story, I think in The Guardian, that she'd been killed in Syria. And,
oh my gosh.
I just started drinking for like 5 straight days. It was hard to
I read that, and I was like,
oh my gosh. It was like, oh my God, it was horrible. And so I went to her funeral, and her little sister, who I never met, tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Are you Gerald Weaver?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "I got to tell you, when Marie died, the partisans buried her body because they didn't want the government to find it. And then when it took Rupert Murdoch and the State Department like 2 weeks to bring her remains back, and she had a little black knapsack, and in it was a satellite phone and some clean underwear and this big honking book that contained your manuscript." She says she must have thought a lot about it because she carried it into this really dangerous place. She carried it over barbed wire fences and through sewers and stuff. She said, "What do you want me to do to it, with it?" And then talked to her a while, and then she sent it to an agent in London. So in a way, Marie's death sort of promoted my book, which is really a strange honor and also an amazing sort of responsibility and a kind of a very macabre thing.
Right.
And I got the manuscript back, and I immediately stuck it in the corner of my closet, and I refused to look at it. I worried that there's something on there or something. People say, haven't you looked at it for notes or whatever? And I said, no, I'm afraid that what I'll find. So, but yeah, she was amazing, and she was hugely famous in England, and she won many awards. Journalist of the Year award.
I saw.
She was friends with Bianca Jagger, and she's friends with a woman who used to date Prince Charles, and she was quite the person. But that secret part of her that most people didn't know about was that she was a bit of a bookworm, and we would talk to each other about Shakespeare and Ibsen and Kafka.
Wow.
Proust, yeah.
Now, it begs to have me ask this question, and certainly no disrespect to your present situation, but I had to ask. It just seemed fitting to me that you would have married her.
Yeah.
Because you did date her, yes?
Yeah, well, the timing was never right.
I'm sorry. If you don't want to answer, you don't have to answer.
Well,
really,
we dated in school, and then after school I came to D.C., and then she went to New York. We dated for a while, then I got involved with someone else, and then she came to D.C. while I was involved with someone else, and then she left, and then I broke up, and so she was in Paris, and then we both ended up marrying different people, but it just didn't fit. But it might have been.
That's just what struck in my mind when I read all that. I thought, this is a love story here. I know that some people may not see that. That's the first thing I saw when I read all these details. I thought,
apparently Charlize Theron is developing a movie about her life, and her people went and met with Marie's family and said, it's going to be like Argo, it's going to be like Argo. And I remember telling Marie's sister, actually, in the end of Argo, they get out. Marie did not get out. I don't know how they can say that. But she said, you, Gerald, you're all over Marie's journals. Marie kept a journal every day since I knew her in college. She said, if they were going to really do that movie, you would be in it. But I don't think I am, which in a way is probably good because it was our relationship.
I get it.
Most of our relationship probably deserves to be, personal.
Yes, I gotcha. Okay, that brings us full forward to, of course, the first gentleman. So, of course, I have various different questions relative to that. But the first thing I want to ask you is, and I know on my own show that I'm not afraid to act like an idiot, and by that I mean I can admit that I'm an idiot about certain things. I'm a very educated woman, but when it comes to your area in terms of politics, I ain't going to lie to you. I ain't very smart, and I know that's not the right word for it, but it's true. I'm not very intelligent as it relates to all that stuff that goes on with the politics of things. So I know that you've served in different capacities. So for someone like me, let's say, obviously I get the general idea of what a lobbyist is, and I know that you've spent some of your career doing something like that. What made you want to work at Capitol Hill, get into the whole political, I call it circus, forgive me, because it has kind of become that. What drove you to want to become influential and work in this sector in particular?
Another really good question. There's a lot of things that pointed to that, and I'll tell you one of them, and that is, it is the only, or maybe acting is too, or writing, I suppose, but it's a non-creative work sphere where you can just jump in there, entry level, and run for office or run a campaign. There's no school you have to go to. There's no apprenticeship you have to serve. It's not like finance or advertising or lots of other things. Although it has elements of advertising and finance and all those things, it's anybody can jump in at any time, and I found that to be really interesting, especially because I started politics when I was quite young, and I thought, wow, if I educate myself and teach myself, I can hit the ground running very early and not be restrained. But it's like the law, only a lot sexier. I mean, you choose a side, you work really hard, you do a lot of talking and arguing and socializing, but it has an impact.
Right.
So I love that. I mean, I liked being able to, run a campaign and have a Democrat replace a Republican, and I love being able to go on the Hill and, work for the causes that I wanted to work for and have some kind of impact. And also, with New York and Hollywood and Washington, sort of like a triad. It's one of the places where things are really going on and happening, and it's cool to pick up the paper or watch television to see things happen and you know that you're part of them. So that's why
Sure.
I got involved in it in the first place.
Yep, and I myself have actually done a little political work. I worked for one of the individuals here that was running for a particular seat, and it is interesting. You meet the most interesting people, and even if you don't necessarily agree politics-wise, it's a great learning experience. It's a great way to feel that you're contributing. To those that are listening in, 1982, you were named the youngest on Capitol Hill to be acting chief of staff, obviously. So we're going to talk a little bit about the obvious, and to those that are listening in that don't know, obviously you worked for Joe Coulter, and the end result wasn't as pretty as we'd like it to be. So before I have you go into that a little bit, what I really wanted to ask was, it seems logical to me, after having gone through the experience you have, has that made it particularly difficult for you to trust political figures now? Because clearly you walked into a situation that you were unaware of. How has that challenged your trust in our government, or in government officials, let's say?
Well, I don't know that my experience with the criminal justice system changed my opinion of political figures so much as my immersion in the process educated me toward it. I mean, when I go to London, they ask me, is it like House of Cards, or, is it like this, is it like that? And I want to tell them, actually, it's probably more like Veep, the comedy. I mean, there are a lot of those representatives and senators who are kind of clueless and self-absorbed, and you would be surprised at how sort of base a lot of them are. And there are not many people that you can count on and keep as a friend. And people look at friendships and acquaintanceships as how valuable they are from a work perspective, which is really kind of cold. And things happen for the wrong reasons a lot of times. So it's rare when you run into someone who's a really conscientious, hardworking, and intelligent, concerned public servant. But they're there. And so I'd say my experience in politics has made me probably a little more jaded than in an informed way. But lots of Americans are distrustful of politics, and they come by that almost instinctively. And I think one of the reasons that Donald Trump has been successful is he's so clearly not a politician. And even though he's got all these other problems that are obvious, I think a lot of people simply respond to that. And he's just not a politician, so that's attractive.
Gotcha. Now, again, listening audience, to those that don't know, you ended up spending a total of 2 years with a conspiracy charge, meaning conspiracy to distribute cocaine, and obstruction of justice charge. Let's say, for instance, you're at the age you're at now, and let's say tomorrow you decided to say to yourself, would this ever happen now? Would you ever entertain the idea of going back, or do you still actively work on political campaigns despite your experience? Because I was unclear if you still do that.
No, actually, I actually was only inside for 16 months. My judge let me out when she discovered that my attorney had I was sentenced to 2 years, but she let me out when she discovered my attorney had engaged in a conflict of interest, which is one of the other many amazing things. But I stayed away from politics for a long time because I'm not sure I would have been welcome. And I still feel that to a certain extent, although I have a really good friend who's a U.S. Senator, and I also make contributions to various campaigns, and I will this election day probably drive across the river into Virginia, which is a swing state, and see what I can do to drive people to the polls. But as far as getting involved in the way I used to be at the campaign level, I don't think that's going to ever happen. Those people, for
Right.
amazed when I look at the Obamas and I see how they seem to have a normal marriage. I'm just so impressed by that because that's highly, highly unusual. I mean, it really becomes 24/7. Politics becomes your life, and I'm not sure I would ever want that again.
Well, and the other interesting question I have for you is, because again, I'm not as familiar with this arena as you necessarily, if you look at that entire situation and how things played out, if you were to talk a little bit about in terms of, obviously you referenced the whole being railroaded in this particular situation, how do you think the criminal justice system could be altered in such a way to where innocent people aren't bearing the brunt of wrongdoing on the part of a politician, let's say?
My case is a sort of one of the exceptions that proves the rule. I mean, I was well off. I was white. I was, 30-something years old. I was well connected, and I was just railroaded right in there. I mean, they rounded up friends of mine, and they gave them all immunity, and they got them to tell stories, and they used the law of conspiracy to make me liable for the things that those other people did. And it also broke down the statute of limitations, so things that I'd done years before. And all those things happened to sort of put me away. And then I got there and I looked around and I was surrounded by innocent men. And most of them were young black men who didn't have anywhere near my wherewithal or understanding. And all they knew, and I heard this all the time, is once the feds are after you, you're done. You just have to give up. And so I saw many, many innocent men in jail, and relatively innocent men in jail, and it was a shame. It was a sad thing. But I think there are many, many things that could be changed. But the first one I would change, I would eliminate the mandatory minimum sentencing, federal sentencing laws, because what happens is, they create these conspiracy charges that do whatever, and they come up with an amount of drugs. Let's say it's 2 ounces of pot or half an ounce of cocaine or whatever, and you're looking at a mandatory 5-year sentence or 10-year sentence. Now, what would happen before mandatory minimums, particularly in a case like mine? I would say this case is weak. Even if I lose, the judge is going to look at this and say, this guy hasn't done anything in years. The charges are based on what his friends did, and so I'm going to give him 6 months probation. So given that, even if I had lost, that would have happened, what would have been unlikely that the prosecutors would have gone ahead with it because it was such a weak case. But because of the mandatory minimums, they're looking at me and they're saying, if you lose, there's nothing is going to happen, but you're going to go away for 7 years. The judge is not going to look at this case and say it's a weak case or you weren't such a bad guy. It's just mandatory. And that mechanical, mathematical fact hangs over the head of every single criminal defendant, and it's like, oh my, I'm gonna, it's 10 years or 2, or 10 years or 4, and almost all of them take deals. George Will, who's a conservative, wrote this in a column last year. He said, given the way the mandatory minimums are, and the other federal powers, they could indict and convict a ham sandwich. And that's about right. The second thing I think I would change is that it's ridiculous that there are federal drug laws. I mean, why is that a federal crime? It should be a local or state crime because it's a local issue, and local people would handle it better. So,
gotcha.
That's my soapbox on that.
See, I'm so glad we get all these soapbox issues out here. And those are interesting. No, seriously, sometimes you have to have guests on and say to them, hey, look, talk to me about this because this is life and this is reality and all this good stuff. Now, before I ask the questions relative to the book, which is, of course, entitled The First Gentleman, which I really like that title, by the way, I have to ask you this question. I've been asking a lot of people this. I myself personally have not decided who I'm going to vote for. I hate even bringing it up in many circles for obvious reasons. And I'm wondering if you notice this in your part of the world. So here's my question. I see hatred. I see people disinvolving their friendships. I see people not talking. I see a lot of fighting. It's very ugly, at least in our sector over here. I'm in Wisconsin, but when I go to New York, etc. What do you think accounts for all of this just there's no black and white here. It's pretty much everybody is just either you're here or you're here, and if you're not voting for Trump, screw you, I'm done talking to you, I don't want to know you. If you're not voting for so-and-so, what's with all the animosity? I mean, are you getting that? Are you getting the sense that things have just, to me, gotten out of control? I think this is a very ugly campaign.
I have a lot of complicated thoughts on that. I'm not sure I can discuss them in 3 minutes. But basically, what it used to be that within Capitol Hill, there was a lot more collegiality. Before Watergate, before reporters started getting really into personal lives, before they changed the lobbying laws, when these guys would go off on junkets together. I mean, there was a time when they were all really, really collegial, and that I think helped make politics much more sensible, and that leaked down from the top to the people, to the voters. But since that time, they are not collegial. They don't even care about their own parties. What they care about is the soundbite and the social media and what happens on the outside. And so they're all playing to the audience, and so they're all a lot more partisan, and they're all a lot more brutal. And that, I think, is sort of leads the way for people. And you find it's that the campaigns themselves and negative advertising and money have just become so antagonistic and negative. I think it's sort of taken a normal sort of partisanship that's existed out in the world among the voters and made it into a really nasty antagonistic thing.
No, I understand. I do. Which, of course, brings us to the first gentleman, who just published, as a matter of fact, last month, August of 2016, follows Melinda Sherman, who, of course, is a female candidate for president. Curiosity question. Is she anything like Hillary?
No, she's actually more like Bernie. Or maybe Trump. I mean, she speaks from the heart, which I think Hillary knows she can't do because there's so much misogyny out there. She has to be really careful not to stir up this hotbed of what's already out there as opposition. But my candidate is one of those ones that says, you know, I'm in love with my husband. He has a family. This matters to me. Politics doesn't matter to me. So I'm going to say what I think. And then people actually respect that and like that and see it as leadership. And I think there's a hunger for that out there. I mean, Trump has sort of twisted it around and made it work, and then Bernie sort of had his way of making it work. But I wanted to say that there's this considerable political orthodoxy out there, that people have never been outspoken or said what they thought was in their heart, and everybody's reading the polls and saying canned statements, and I think people are tired of that. So I wanted my candidate to say, yes, I plan to breastfeed in the Oval Office. Yes, I think the war on drugs is a sin. Yes, I'm pro-choice, but I'm also pro. I'm not in favor of gun control. I have my own different opinions. They're all strong opinions. You're all going to tick different people off, but they're sincerely mine, and I don't care what people think because this is what I think. And then in the book, people respond to that. And I think, in a way, that's predicted what's happened now. I mean, Trump has sort of turned it on his head, and Bernie Sanders sort of did too. But I think a lot of things that are attractive of both those candidates are the fact that they seem to not be typical politicians. And so my candidate is not a typical politician. She's outspoken.
I agree with you, 150%. Definitely. This has been such a wonderful interview, hasn't it? Oh, my gosh, this hour just sped like right by, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it was certainly the most interesting, comprehensive, and well-researched interview I've ever given.
You think so?
Really
well, I try.
No, you're really something.
I do. Well, thank you so much. Well, yes, definitely. I didn't want to forget to mention a couple of different things, and just correct me if I'm wrong, because I have a list of all different places where people can find you. Before I do this, I want to do a special shout-out to Josh Weissman, because if it wasn't for him at PR Pros, I would not have learned about you, and if I didn't learn of you, you wouldn't come on my show. And I have to tell you, without publicists, sometimes I wouldn't meet the most interesting characters, and you, by far, have actually made my day. This is the highlight of my day, is doing this interview. It's kind of all downhill after this, so this has been wonderful. So thank you, Josh Weissman, for this. This is lovely. Okay, so I found you on Facebook, so you have a personal page. I also know that you have a Gospel Prism page on Facebook. Your actual website, Gerald Weaver, that's Weaver, to those of you that don't know, and then author.com, gospelprism.com, amazon.com, goodreads.com. You're on YouTube. You are on LinkedIn. You're on Instagram, and that's Gerald, and then .Weaver. And then, of course, Twitter, which is and then Gerald_Weaver_. Did I miss anything?
No, you didn't. Pretty much.
Oh, look at that. Swing! I got it all. Okay, so the last segment of my show, we always wrap up with the same thing, which is I get to tell my guests what I think of him. Because it's my show, I get to do that. And so I'm just going to take 60 seconds to tell you what I think of you, because I may or may not ever get a chance to see you. I mean, if I'm nice enough to you and I beg you, maybe you'll let me come to, like, your book signing or something, or, like, I'll ever get to, like, talk to you again. That'd be awesome. These are my impressions of Gerald Weaver, and keep in mind, folks, that I have never met him before. I only have limited information on the basis of what Josh gave me, and I kind of just did my job and went from there. So, dear sir, from me to you, let me tell you this much. One of the reasons I wanted to interview you is because your story was so different. Not because you've done jail time, because I've interviewed plenty of those. Not because you've written books, because I've interviewed plenty of those. Because you have the heart, from my sense of things, you have the heart of an author and an artist. There is nothing that appeals to me more than someone that takes something that goes in the inside of their heart and bring it on the outside of their heart and put it on paper and make it into something magical, which is something that you've done. You're very intelligent. You're very eclectic. You're very interesting because you're funny and silly, and you're not afraid to make fun of yourself or other people or other things in the very best way. You apparently have a huge love story going on at home, which is wonderful, with your children and with your wife and with your life story. I love the fact that you're humble and that you're honest and that you're hardworking. And at the end of the day, you seem like such a fascinating person to be surrounded by. I want to thank you so much for spending time with me today, because it was a privilege. It was truly my honor to interview someone like yourself. And I do hope that I can do something for your daughter or anything in the future for yourself. Know that you're more than welcome to come back. That's it.
Thank you. Now I'm going to spend the rest of my life living up to that summary.
Trust me, you've already lived up to it. You made it onto the show. I was so nervous I couldn't stand it, and you're actually you're lovely. So this was wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. And certainly, yes, I will keep in touch after the fact, and I'll let you know, because I do have some resources for your daughter. Not that she's not capable on her own, but I'm more than welcome to always help a fellow actress or a fellow artist, because that's just what I do. Certainly. Yeah. So I will certainly stay in touch, and I will post, just so you know, I will post all your personal information up on my Facebook pages so that everybody can get information relative to your book. And this episode will be archived in about an hour or so, in case anybody wants to go back and listen.
Okay, thank you very much. I will spread it around.
Well, not a problem. Thank you very much. You have a great day.
I appreciate how much research you did, too. It was amazing. It really was. Thank you.
Well, that's too kind. Thank you, and I hope you have a lovely holiday weekend.
I will. Thank you. Bye.
All right, dear. Okay, folks, was he incredible or not? That was Gerald Weaver. Again, one more time. Josh Weissman, thank you so much. I hope I've done you justice, and to your client, I hope I've done good for him. Again, Amazon.com, Goodreads.com, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram is Gerald.Weaver. Twitter is @Gerald_Weaver_. Websites, gospelprism.com, also GeraldWeaverAuthor.com, and on Facebook you can find him with his personal page as well as Gospel and Prism, is PRISM. Josh Weissman is with PR Pros. If you wish to look him up online, he'd be more than happy to handle all your public relations needs. Last thing I want to mention, Sunday at 10 a.m., my Canadian moonchild soul sister Chantal Marie will be on, a.k.a. Shania Twain. Please tune in, 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks so much, guys, and thanks again to Gerald, and thanks so much to Josh. You guys have a great weekend.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. By singing dog. By goal.
I pronounce you.
By wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. By singing dog. By goal.
I pronounce you.
By wedding ceremony.
Stop. At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figure it out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.